Hi, welcome to the Funding Blueprint Unlocking Startup Success, presented by StartHub. I'm Cody Goff, and today we're talking EdTech. You're going to learn how you can showcase your startup's potential by focusing on impact, innovation, and the 5 Ps. And you're going to learn what problems are the best EdTech companies really trying to solve. We're also going to get into the recent transformation of education through alternative learning pathways, the significance of practical skills in a digital age, and the concept of authentic assessment. My guest is Don Burton, who's spent his career at the cutting edge of education innovation and technology, launching, scaling, and exiting companies. Don is currently a co-founder and managing partner at LearnStart, a leading-edge VC fund focused exclusively on innovation, learning, and talent. And Don is based in New York. To start our conversation, I asked Don, what's the most excited you've ever been to invest in a company, and what caused that excitement that other startup founders like you could maybe learn from? Here's our conversation.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Obviously, you look for a lot of criteria, but the first one for me is always, what kind of impact is the startup going to have? So, most entrepreneurs, they're not just doing it obviously for the money. They want to have a change in the world and they want to get excited about, hey, here's what's needed. I'm going to change this. So, what is that change? And is it big? Is it exciting? How passionate is the founder about it? And so, I would say that, big ideas are what venture capital is all about. So entrepreneurs want to have a really big idea, be excited about it, and, express it. And, this is why it's going to be so important and all that type of stuff. And a couple examples from my portfolios is certainly Degreed, which is a EdTech company that I invested in back in 2013, which basically they were trying to change the degree system at universities. Is just crazy, right? We educated, I've been educated 30 years ago, whatever it was, and we still say, well, where did you go to school, and what did I have a degree from some institution. It doesn't tell anything about what my skill sets are, what my knowledge bases are, what I can do in the world, what I'm competent at, and so their whole idea was we need to jailbreak the degree, and that's why it's called Degreed. It's kind of different degrees, not the traditional degrees, right? And we need to help organizations and individuals kind of better articulate and communicate, what am I great at, right? And why are you hiring me? And then, companies need to know what kind of skills and talents they have in their organization. And just by looking at a degree from a university, you have no idea what your employee knows, right? So it was a really big idea, and it turns out that they did fantastic. They basically, started off on the individual side, but pivoted to the corporate side, and they really help corporations who need skill sets. They a corporation will strategically look at, hey, here's my HR department, here's what kind of skills I need over time, and then kind of articulate those, and then people that are employees can sign up and say, hey, listen, I'd love to be a coder. I'd love to be a digital marketer. Let me get those skill sets and let me sign up for a bunch of a pathway of courses that get me to a different position and a different skill set and competence kind of set within the corporation. So what Degreed does is really helps, the employees and the employer match the type of skills they need, and then helps everyone kind of upskill and get to some new levels of competence and new levels of performance and new levels of salary for the employee, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a company that, again, is still out there. It's a unicorn that has been doing really well. And I would say that was a good example of, somebody that came in. The founder was David Blake. He came in with a really exciting, passionate plea for this is what the world needs. It's big. It's immediate. Let's do this. And again, that's an example of a pitch that I got excited about, and it all worked out swimmingly.
So relatable. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but I got my first radio job because I used a particular piece of editing software that ironically was not taught or used in my radio program. I just used it. So that degree software mismatch, I can completely relate to.
Yeah.
Now, big ideas, do you look at the big ideas like that? Like when they walked in, is it the big idea and then you think the money follows? Or what kind of balance do you look for between the bigness of the idea and the excitement around it and the nuts and bolts? Is this going to make me money?
Yeah. So again, I've got a framework called the 5 Ps. And the first one is the problem area. So the first P is the big idea, the big problem. What are we trying to change in the world? So that's just one of the 4 variables. The second variable is, the first variable is people. Like, are these people like competent people that have, demonstrated that they can do stuff, they can get things done? Do they have a track record? Even if they haven't started another company, do they just have evidence that they are doers and shakers and movers and can make things happen? And so whatever that evidence looks like, they could be 20 years old and have evidence that they can get things done, right? But the people are probably the most important. The problem is probably second. The third is, what initial MVP or product do they have? So the third P is product, which is, hey, it looks like these guys really have a design sense. These guys really kind of look like they're differentiating their product from whatever else is out in the market. So you kind of, again, I don't think the product is that important, because if it's a good problem and good people, they'll keep iterating and pivoting the product and get it to the right spot eventually to get product market fit. But basically you want to look at whatever they have and whatever, MVP they have, or whatever alpha, beta, or initial product they have. And then largely you want to look at the process, which is the business model. Like, how much money do they make? What's the margin? Is it capital efficient? Is it capital intensive? You look at all those types of process and business model and everything else about, step 1 to step 5. Does it look like it's very doable? And this is like a SaaS software model where it's going to scale and have great margins really easily, right? SaaS is one of the best segments of the market where it's the business model is extremely capital efficient and extremely scalable. And then you want to look at just the progress they've made, and the timing and all the kind of intangibles around, progress, and what evidence, what is there, what just is the timing right? The infrastructure is in place for all the things that they're trying to do. The demand side, the supply side, things just seem to be in place that this can all happen soon. Whereas, so for example, Web3, everyone got excited about Web3 and they invested. It's not quite ready for prime time. Generative AI came out of the gates quickly, and lots of people are using it. So it was more ready for prime time, right? So those are the types of issues you got to look at as well, because there's a time and a place, and the timing can be right or the timing might not be right, right?
That's got to be really hard as an investor, though, because if you're looking at least probably a 10-year relationship with a lot of the startups you work with, I think about something like VR, right? Like VR also hasn't, broken through, right? It's really promising. Adoption could increase. Meta is all about it. So as an investor, would you look at something like that and be like, are you forecasting on your own, kind of like, well, we think VR will peak in 10 or 15 or 20 years, and then investing against that?
Yeah, I mean, in other words, we certainly don't want to invest in anything that's going to, peak in 10 years. We want it to start going up the S curve and start getting growth, much sooner than that, because you want to exit in 10 years. But, you look at something like VR, that was, it's too early, and the infrastructure and the installed base isn't there. So, we'd be cautious in getting into something like VR. We do have 1 or 2 VR investments, but we're extremely cautious until you start seeing the infrastructure get put in place and the whole like Apple metaverse, those people that are defining the hardware, defining the standards, defining, how you interface with the metaverse, let Apple, take a couple swacks at it. And, and then as things start moving, that's when you want to time it better. So that's a good example of timing. I would not get into metaverse. I wouldn't go heavy into metaverse right now. I wouldn't go heavy into Web3 right now until we get a lot more use cases and we get a lot more infrastructure and things being proven out with emerging technologies. So I always try to be at the cutting edge, but not the bleeding edge. And the bleeding edge is where a lot of mistakes are made because you invest too early and nothing happens for too long, well past your venture fund life cycle.
It's a great tagline. I might use that in the title of this episode. Be it the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge.
Yes.
Very nice. Well, let's talk about what you are investing in. What's the biggest problem you're seeing in education right now? At any level, your choice, maybe whatever kind of jumps out to you, that there is a need to solve. And, do you have any companies in your portfolio that are good examples, or are you just like hoping somebody will come along and help out?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think that, education as a sector and industry is definitely ripe for innovation, right? It has certainly not been a lead sector as far as deploying technology and coming up with amazing ideas. It's kind of been a laggard, stodgy, old kind of do things the way we've done things for hundreds of years. And, it's tough because it is a lot of public funding that goes into the EdTech sector, right? But I think what is happening is you certainly can find your EdTech opportunities within the traditional publicly funded or nonprofit systems like K-12 schools or higher ed. But what we primarily look for is more transformative opportunities that are kind of working at the edge of the traditional systems. It's kind of like outside in and then bottoms up, with more market forces, delivering what the kids want, what the parents want. Or alternatives to college. So, there's a lot of talk about, the alternative pathways to college because, like, I've invested in a company called Creator Up, which is a community of digital media producers and everybody that produces media for corporations for, anything other than movies and TV probably, right? And so basically what they do is they train people, they give them real gigs, and you learn on the job, and they train you beforehand if you don't have a lot of experience, or if you have some experience, they get you gigs, and then you get better and better by doing more gigs and working with a bunch of people that can give you feedback and they can give you feedback. And so you don't have to go to NYU or USC and pay, $100,000 a year to get a film and TV degree or a media degree. You can go start working right now. And the only way you really get better at stuff is going and doing it and getting feedback from an expert community of practice, right? So that's what the Creator Up does. And it's kind of an alternative to, the other types of TV, film, and, media degrees or certifications. Like, just go do it and get better and better at it. And people are going to pay you more and more as you get better and better. And those are the kind of interesting alternative pathways that you're seeing. That's a creative industry or a creative kind of skill set example. Obviously, the technical skills like coding and data science and UX, UI, and all those things have boot camps and have all sorts of alternative pathways. If you wanted to get in to be a software engineer, there's lots of ways to do that other than to go get a computer science degree. And now with generative AI, I'm going to become a prompt engineer for the generative AI to create code instead of, doing something in a formal school that won't change their computer science program for years and years and be totally obsolete by the time generative AI has moved another quarter or two. Computer science degrees are going to go by the way of the dodo. So anyhow, those are the types of, the different things. Like, so I think if I think the big picture is, education, the entire sector needs to be transformed. Like, we don't do education well. Like, if you think about education, all education is an explicit intervention into somebody's learning curve, like getting better at something, right? And the only thing schooling gets you better at is being a good schooler, right? Getting A's and B's and whatever on your tests, because you listen to lectures, you take good notes, you study, cram, and then you take multiple choice tests. Like, who cares about that? Where in the world are people getting paid a lot of money to be really good at cramming and taking multiple choice tests? It's like the only way to get competent in the real world is to go out in the real world and solve problems. Be an engineer. Be a digital media producer. Be a sales and marketing guy. Do something in business functions. Go do it with a good group of people that know what they're doing, that are experts and that do it well, and then get feedback from them. And that's how you get up the learning curve in any domain in the world, in life. So there's a bunch of sectors and industries and domains and different roles and responsibilities. The way you get good at any of those is by starting, getting curious about it, starting out, doing something, getting better and better with feedback from experts that you're doing it with. And that's how you go up learning curves and adding real value in the real world. And I believe that we're really at one of these historic points where the way we've designed schooling, the industrial age model of schooling, was fine to teach reading, write, arithmetic, but that's necessary, but it's so insufficient. Like what you need to do in this modern age is not read, write, and do arithmetic. Those, yes, you need to do those, but you need to do a gazillion things more, and you need to be confident in the real world, not just at those 3 notational systems, right? So basically, I think that the education sector in particular, the entire thing has to just radically change. Like it's going to be disruption, transformation, all sorts of, social impact creation, because it's like we can do so much good by changing this old, tired, long in the tooth system and replace it and disrupt it and transform it with all these wonderful, innovative ideas that are market driven, coming from a group of entrepreneurs with a lot of great ideas, serving customers, whether they be the student, the learner, the parent, the teacher, and providing just great stuff in a much more market-driven way. So I think that, yes, the entire sector, like everything they do, the pedagogy is just all wrong. And we're going to have some major, in the next 20 years, I think you'll see more change in this sector than you have in the last 2,000 years for the sector.
I mean, there's been more technological innovation in the last 50 years than probably about that span of time prior to that. So I could see it happening. I got to ask, follow up on the kind of the market-driven skills. You've talked a lot about practical, marketable skills and knowledge, right? Like I'm thinking workplace stuff. Is there room for classic liberal arts education innovation? Is there value in teaching kids how to be able to read a book and understand what the author is saying, or go to a museum and understand, what the art is, the history, things like that? What's your perspective as an investor on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how do you live life well is a really important topic and area of discussion, meaning we all want to live life as best we can, right? So how do we appreciate art? How do we appreciate life? How do we appreciate everything, right? And so liberal arts definitely has a role, but that's kind of like, I think, a misconception of people. They think, oh, well, you need those kind of pristine college campuses off in a bucolic little rural area where you go to a liberal arts college, you get to sit around with 5 or 10 people, and that's great. It certainly could work, but I think the better path is actually a path I've taken, which is just like the creator up path or the technical skills gap paths that we talked about. It's, you think about meditation and, trying to have more peace in your life, to have more awareness, like if you think about the mindfulness movement, and that's a liberal arts topic, right? But it's not just a theoretical liberal arts talk where I'm going to listen to a lecture and take a multiple choice test. It's like, you want to meditate because you want to live your life better. It's going to be very practical philosophy, not theoretical philosophy, right? And so basically there's a ton of, boot camps for mindfulness, right? So if you think about like the Insight Meditation Society, they have campuses, they have online programs, but they teach you how to pay attention to your attention. Like, why am I distracted all the time? Why can't I focus on one thing? How do I understand just the monkey mind and what it's doing, and how do I get better awareness of it and then manage my mind more effectively? It's an amazingly valuable skill, right? Very practical skill, but it's a liberal arts skill. So all the liberal arts is very practical to live life well. And so, understanding what beauty is a really important part of enjoying life. And there's real practical ways for you to get better at, discerning beauty in the world and being aware of beauty. And it probably starts with some mindfulness, to tell you the truth. So again, liberal arts are just like any other topic. I call this all real school. So like old school and new school is kind of trying to reform the traditional institutions we have today. And that's EdTech 1.0 and EdTech 2.0. And we could go into more detail, but that was kind of the first waves of let's innovate in education. Well, we just kind of did the same things we've been doing, except we make it digital and make it accessible, or we flip the classroom, and instead of doing the lecture in the class, you watch it at home, and then you come and you have worksheets, or you have a discussion or something of that nature. So you're taking the same elements of what we do today, and then you're just, flipping them around, trying to innovate. And that's all incremental change. But to really, really transform that, so that's incremental innovation. Transformative innovation is much more profound, which is reinventing, what we teach, how we teach, where we teach, when we teach. It's like rethinking from first principles. How do we better make people live life well and live life intelligently, right? Because intelligence, which is, just being able to manage life well, that's the objective of education. Is like, I want to live as best I can and be intelligent about how I live. And so there's lots of places to do that, and you can do it in any domain, any realm, any field, any topic. And you want to do it in a way that is transformational to you. It has an impact on you. It's not that you just got an A on a multiple choice test and then you forgot it and you went on your life as you went before, right? It totally changes your identity because you're a new person. If I appreciate art and understand beauty, I'm gonna go into a museum and my life is gonna be transformed. It's not that I just got a multiple choice test correct and I walked into a museum and had no difference in my experience level. Like, you need to change your experiences, change your identity, transform yourself as part of the learning process. Schools do a terrible job of that.
So I'll show my cards a little bit. So I'm a big fan of liberal arts education. I went to a liberal arts college. My wife has a PhD in comparative literature and teaches at the university level. 100% hear what you're saying and love it, right? I love, we've got a whole room full of books, read to our kids every night. But when you hear culturally, more broadly, conversations around education, so much of it tends to be about the skills-based acquisition, right? And I think some people look at that as the way to make money in education, right? We'll teach you a skill and you pay us for it, and there's the exchange of value. You hear some people harp on college. Well, people go to college, and what does an art history degree do for you? Well, I know what it does for you, and you know what it does for you, but maybe the person paying doesn't know what it does for you. So as an investor, what kind of opportunity is there for innovation and education that can push the envelope in terms of helping people, again, all the stuff we talked about, cultivate their appreciation for life and become better people and educated?
Yeah.
How do you sell that? And make money on it as an investor?
Yeah, again, I think there are a myriad of ways to do that. And it's not just like you're saying, professional, hardcore technical skills, right? Like soft skills are a big deal, right? Social emotional learning, SEL, is a big buzzword in all of K-12 right now, right? Because people need to be engaged. How do I engage with the world? How do I communicate with people? How do I social and collaborate? And all these kind of skills that you're saying are, I call them power skills, like, creativity and creative problem solving and critical thinking and analytical thinking, right? All these things combined with, social skills and all sorts of social emotional learning, or the softer side of life. Those have been important for a long time, and people are, just focused on those as opposed to, coding skills, right? But again, it's the same thing that's going on. They happen in traditional settings. They happen in, innovative online settings. They happen in innovative hybrid that's a little bit in person, mostly driven by a tech platform, so they're more repeatable, scalable. You're getting lots of different business models to deliver lots of different alternatives across whatever is important to you. And again, it can be, like you're saying, teaching people how to read and want to read, like they're excited to have a book full of, I'll show you my books here. I've got hundreds of books, and most of these, are old because everything's on my Kindle now, and I have hundreds of books on my Kindle. But the point being that, how do you get people curious about the world? That's a soft skill, and you can do it. You can, get people exposed. Like, kids are born hardwired to learn, right? Any baby's grabbing everything they can, putting it in their mouth, banging it on the thing, checking things out. It's like when you sit someone behind a desk and just lecture them all day, they get bored as hell and they think of learning as boring and education as boring and they don't want to do it, right? But it's like we're wired to do it. We're doing it all the time. We're doing it 24/7. We always are learning and we want to get better at stuff. So you tap into that dopamine and those chemical profiles that already exist in us, and you help kids kind of get in touch with them about what does get me curious. Like, oh, that's more interesting than this. Well, great. Why is that more interesting? Let's do more. And then you build an interest into a passion, into a purpose, into a profession, et cetera, right? Now, but there's a way to do that. And you can teach that, you can scaffold that, you can, there's lots of different ways to teach, liberal arts topics, which is the humanities, let's say, STEM topics, business and entrepreneurship topics. So there's lots of different arts and media and design topics. There's anything you want to do in life is teachable in a different way than we sit people down behind desks and lecture at them and make them take multiple choice tests. It's the silliest thing in the world. Like if Martians came down from Mars and said, what are these people doing in these crazy things that look like prison buildings, on the outskirts of burbs, and kids have to get bused there and it's compulsory. If they don't go, they get thrown in jail. And like they sit there all day and they listen to someone and they take notes and then they go home, they study those notes and then they have multiple choice tests. What are these people doing? Like, why are they doing that? I don't know. It's a very narrow set of activities for the rich and amazing world that we live in that has all sorts of problems and opportunities that are going to tweak your curiosity and interest. Like, why do we sit you down and just say, you can only do this? Like, the world is so amazing, fascinating, interesting, awe-inspiring, wonder-filled. Let's let kids have at it instead of like forcing them to do crazy, narrow stuff that no one would want to do.
Yes. Wow. I should hang out and grab a beer sometime. So to the point you mentioned earlier, EdTech 1.0 and EdTech 2.0, was that what you were talking about with incremental versus transformative innovation,
Yes.
or is there more to it?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so basically,
Got
it's that going back to that point. So there's been a lot of money poured into the education system, the K-12 education system. I think the numbers are staggering, and I have them in one of my blog posts. But it's basically, I think they've doubled spending since, let's say, 1979. They've doubled spending and they have worse results. Like, what sector of the economy would that ever, all the traditional players are still the same traditional players. Like, that just would never happen in a market-driven economy, right? And so basically, we the idea is, do we want to reform that, that system? Which is like tinkering, like, oh, let's get a little bit better math curriculum. Let's get a little bit better, reading instructors. Like, no, like we need to rethink how we do this stuff. And so EdTech 1.0 was largely just taking the textbook and making a digital textbook with more photos and some videos in it, right? Multimedia textbook, right? And then the chalkboard became a whiteboard, and I could draw with a felt pen instead of a piece of chalk. And I could store it if it was really amazing digital technology, right? But we did exactly the same stuff we were doing. We just made it digital. And it was like we didn't change the education at all. And the worst of that was we took the entire classroom experience and we just ported it with the lectures straight online, and we had the entire online course digital. It's like, wow, that's really exciting. But people made a lot of money doing that. University of Phoenix at one point was valued at $7 billion. So there was a lot of value created because a lot of people chose that for the accessibility. It made it more accessible to lots more people, but it really didn't change the process of what we're going through with education. And, I think, and then Education 2.0 was trying to reform in a different way. That's kind of like the Saul Kahn idea of flip the classroom. Like, let's watch the video before we get to classroom, and then we can have a more engaging conversation. We can have small group worksheets and teams where a teacher goes around a table to table, and you get some incremental benefit because everyone's watched the video, but they did it on their own time. And now we're going to have, get more into the topic better. And so that's kind of EdTech 2.0, which is really the same infrastructure. We're just kind of flipping things. The homework becomes the in-class stuff, and the in-class stuff became the homework to watch the video lecture at home, and let's do the homework in school in small groups and stuff. But it's basically the same elements, just kind of, flipped and shaken around to create reform and innovation, right? And what I'm arguing is we need to just rethink entirely how we get people competent in the world and get them to have intelligent behavior to live their life as best they can. And how do you How do you just, fulfill your potential and live life as best possible? Like, schools don't deal with that at all. That is at the heart of education. And that's what we need to we need to think much more deeply about what the heck we're doing and why are we having our kids go do this for 21 years of their lives, where we, stick them in some room for, 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. It's just nutso in my mind. The emperor has no clothes.
It's a good way of putting it. There's another title I could use for this episode. The emperor has new clothes.
No
bleeding
clothes.
edge, not cutting edge, not bleeding edge.
Yeah,
So
there
many
you go.
taglines. I want to talk really specific about implementation of it. If I'm a startup founder, I've got a great idea. It applies to K through 12. As an investor, where do they start? Are they starting in like 1 or 2 schools? Are there states that are more likely to try and adopt new things? Right? No one wants their kids to be a guinea pig in a new way of doing things. But how far can startups go on their own before getting investing? Talk to me a little bit about how you evaluate that.
Yeah, I mean, to your question of, are there certain states that are being more innovative? And a lot of states are being more innovative about letting the money follow the kid. So if you look at Arizona in particular, that's been a state that has let the, like $9,000 a year, close to the equivalent of what it would cost to send a kid to public school. They're giving that money to the parent or letting the parent spend it on, online digital schools or micro schools or all sorts of different types of learning opportunities. And so we're invested in a company called Prenda, which does a lot of business in Arizona, where what they do is, so instead of sending your kid to a traditional public school, you take that money that the state gave you, so it's free to you and your family, and you go to a Prenda school. And what a Prenda school is largely it's a digital platform. So, a lot of the instructors are virtual and digital, but you have a kind of a leader who's in the local community. So let's say you're in Phoenix, Arizona. And you're in this suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. There'll be a power mom who's probably an ex-consultant, an ex-lawyer, an ex-doctor, an ex-something, right? And now she's got kids and she wants to, and she's got a great home, and she'll run a 12-person school right out of her home. Or someone will do that at the church, or someone will do that at the science center, or someone will do it wherever, right? So you have a local hybrid kind of schooling model where kids can show up locally, so you have that socialization, but they're learning much better curriculum. Like they're doing the soft skills that you mentioned about, hey, this world's a pretty interesting place. What are you curious about? Let's go investigate that. Let's go get better at. What do you want to get better at? What do you care about? Let's go investigate. Let's go research. Let's go do. Let's go act. And so they get kids kind of excited about what's going on in the world. What do I care about in the world? And what do I want to do? And they help them decide that. Whereas schools kind of just, the adult dictates it. We've got first grade curriculum and we're going to shove it down your throat. And then we got second grade curriculum and we're going to shove it down your throat. Here, certainly you need to read, write, and do arithmetic, but you're doing it embeddedly around real world interesting things that kids are excited about. And when kids are excited about something and they want to learn and love to learn, they learn on steroids. They learn reading, writing, arithmetic so much better than they do in a dry classroom with no interest and no relevance to their lives. So you make it engaging and relevant to their lives, and they learn so much more effectively. So you're starting to see micro schools in particular. Homeschooling does this as well. Homeschooling's a lot of work. Parents, don't want to bite that off because it's a huge responsibility. So these micro schools are kind of like organized homeschools with, 15 kids in the class and much more flexibility, but it's driven by a central curriculum. Like Elon Musk, everyone knows Elon Musk. Most people don't know he has a school called Ad Astra or Ad Astronova now. And basically, it's very much like helping kids understand what they want to do in the world. And so like a lot of kids were engineers for SpaceX that were going to his micro school. And so a lot of them were interested in rockets. Surprise, surprise. Their families into rockets. Rockets are flying off. Elon Musk is a big personality in their world because their parents work at SpaceX. So you want to be, you go and you learn rocket science. You go and blast off ST rockets. You go from ST rockets to bigger rockets. You do digital simulations in a thing called Kerbal Space Program 2, which is like real rocket science for kids, right? But you're really learning it and you're getting really competent at the things you work at, and you have to read, you have to write, and you got to do mathematical modeling. So, they're learning all the things that we care about as adults, like our kids need to do math, right? Yeah, absolutely. But let them do it around stuff that they care about, that they want to get better at, so that they know the relevance of it and they're engaged in it and they're excited to get better at it because it helps them achieve the goals that they have, instead of some goals of some abstract institution has for them. So that's what a lot of these micro schools are doing. And you're starting to see that pop up. Like Arizona does a really good job of getting the money to the parents so they can go do these types of educational opportunities. But even across the globe, across the globe, but certainly in the States, you're getting low priced, private schools that look like these micro schools instead of your traditional private school. I live in Fairfield County, Connecticut. It's, $50,000 a year to send them to, my private school that looks just like my public school as far as traditional education. And there hasn't been as many micro schools, but they're starting to, there's come up. There's Prenda, there's Sora, there's another one in Austin. I'm spacing the name, but it was a professor from the University of Texas. So he's, there's like all sorts of really interesting micro schools that are doing a much more interesting job of embedding what we as adults really care about, academics, as well as power skills and soft skills, but they're embedding it around, kind of negotiating curriculum with the kids. So the kids get to decide what they want to learn and what they're excited about. And then the adults are responsible for embedding, making sure we're not leaving you behind and you're not going to know any math. You're not going to know how to read. You're not going to know how to write. You're not going to know how to do whatever, right? So the adults can embed what we as adults think is important to learn within those experiences for the kids. And they're much richer experiences because it's like life. Life is really rich. You look at adult roles and responsibilities, they're almost infinite. And there's almost an infinite, things for adults to do. Why do we have kids do one thing for 21 years of their life, which is go to a classroom, listen to a lecture, take notes, cram on your notes, and take multiple choice tests? It's the narrowest set of activities that we ask our kids to do for 21 years. And it's ludicrous.
Let me just ask this one final question then. In terms of measurement, it's really hard to assess the performance, the success of any educational tool. So many variables, right? Parenting, the social, the other kids in the classroom. You get 2 or 3 troublemakers and they disrupt the class often enough. They ruin the learning experience for everybody.
Well, the assessment. So assessment's a really big deal because it absolutely is easier to grade a multiple choice test. And that's probably why we do them more than we do anything else. And that's what kids become expert at, is taking multiple choice tests. But within any given domain and field, there are performance metrics. So take the Elon Musk Ad Astra example. Kids are going and learning rocket science and space exploration. There's real performance. Did your rocket get off the launch pad or did it explode on the launch pad? In other words, they really get to get feedback from authentic, I made decisions about how much thrust, how big of an engine, how much weight was on the engine, how much drag was there with all the different, surface area, et cetera. You do those calculations, you make your decisions, and then there's consequences to your decisions. And that's the beauty. It's authentic assessment within a real context. And the only way you learn is within a real context. And so if you're going to do rocket science, go do rocket science and you'll get a lot of feedback on getting better at doing rocket science. And then what's transferable is learning how to learn, critical thinking, creative thinking, practical problem solving, communication, collaboration skills. All those will apply across all the different things that I'm interested in as I'm pursuing whatever my kind of, domain areas of interest are. So authentic assessments are fantastic. And I used to run a startup accelerator program, Techstars EdTech in New York City with Kaplan. And that's a perfect example of what I call a real school. So instead of an old school or a new school, which are EdTech 1.0 and EdTech 2.0, I like to talk about real schools, and I'm writing a book on this topic, which is Real School is the Future of Education, will be the title of it with some tagline to that. But basically, Real School is, this is a perfect example, a startup accelerator program. I went to Harvard Business School. I did about 3 to 5 cases a night. They went, they just throw a fire hose at you and you just read. Nothing sticks because I'm just on to the next one. Everything's just like in one ear and out the other. And sure, I got good grades. That's fine. But what did I learn? And you learn so much better when it's your own thing that you care about. So when you're doing your own startup, believe me, you're emotionally, passionately connected to what you're doing and what decisions you make and the consequences of your decisions. And you're learning all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I spent all this money on marketing and I didn't get one guy to sign up. What did I do wrong? How do I learn to do it better? Like, you learn a ton about your product, your marketing, your fundraising. There's real performance metrics on all of those things, and you get immediate feedback. Did you get to raise $500K, or did nobody give you any money for your startup whatsoever? That's really good feedback. That's called authentic assessment. That's what the world does. In context, there's plenty of metrics to measure. We're just too lazy because it's that joke with the keys underneath the flashlight. It's like some guys looking around underneath the the street lamp, and they said, "Hey, I'm looking for my keys," and they said, "Oh, well, where'd you lose them? Let me help." They said, "Oh, I lost them over in the dark there, but I can't see anything." It's like, just because it's easy and the light's there doesn't mean, there's not metrics out in the wild. There's a ton of metrics out in the wild and a lot of opportunity for authentic assessment. So I'm a big fan of that as opposed to, drill and kill with multiple choice tests.
Yeah, it's really cool that we now have a society where you can authentically assess so much on your own. Like, people ask me, how do you get into podcasting? Go to a podcast. You can do it on your phone. Yeah. You can host it for free. You don't need anything. Oh, you want to learn social media marketing? Make a Twitter account for it.
Well, and not only can you go do it exactly like you're saying, this is the model for Real School. Not only you go do it, but now there's 50 people that were before you, Cody, that did podcasts, and you can go learn from them. You can see the different styles. You can even take you can go to their YouTube channel and see like how to do a good podcast type of thing. And you can do it from the guys that you like the best. So there's all there's just a information explosion. Like, it used to be, we have all these schooling infrastructure was developed when there was, a sparsity of information. Now there's an overload of information. Like, we don't need to go to school to listen to people lecture to us. The information's flowing through our ears all the time. We got to make sense of it. We got to use it for living life well, right? And being intelligent, having intelligent behavior to live life well. And this is not what we do in schools.
And you can read a lot of great thoughts from Don on his page at medium.com/DC Burton.
That's correct.
And you can learn more about LearnStart at learnstart.vc. Don Burton, thank you so much for joining me. Loved our conversation.
Thank you, Cody. Have a great day.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I know Don came down pretty hard on traditional education institutions. So for this outro, I threw on a sweater from my alma mater, Drake University, go Bulldogs, as a reminder that, there's room for improvement, but it's not all bad when it comes to education. I know I sure had a good time at Drake, and I learned a lot. And I had a good time even during marching band practice in 90-degree weather in a parking lot in August every year. Anyway, the Funding Blueprint is produced by me, Cody Goff, with audio and video editing by Sean Patel. If you're looking for exceptional sound design or audio-video production work, get in touch with Sean at seanpatel.com. Thanks again for joining me, and have a great week.